Thank you, Jane. That was very kind. Anyway, I'm excited to be here. Good afternoon. My goal when I do these programs is to see if we can become fit. That is, F-I-T, have fun, make it imaginative and thought-provoking. And to achieve this, I have what I call my triple A method. We're going to give you a chance, hopefully, to grapple with some anxiety, maybe even think about, if not act out, a little aggression, and to engage life's slings and arrows with some playful yet purposeful absurdity. So already you know something about me. F-I-T, triple A. You can tell I've been living in the D.C. area way too long. I'm convinced if you've been up here for more than a year, you should be mandated to a 12-step AA group. Acronyms or alliterations anonymous. Can anybody relate to that? Anyway, well, we're going to have fun, but it's not going to be all fun and games. I can still see this somewhat pompous State Department manager sort of testing me and saying, what do you call it if you don't have any stress? And I said, denial. So now I'm sure none of us are in denial, but as my mother would say to me, Mark, I trust you, but I worry. So with that in mind, let's just see very quickly if we can do my 3B stress barometer exercise. This is going to be really revved up. So here it is. How does your brain, your body, and your behavior, how does your brain, your body, and your behavior let you know when you're under more stress than usual? If you want, turn to a neighbor or two. Just throw out some ideas. How does your brain, your body, and your behavior tell you when you're under stress? Okay, I'm hearing some good discussion. Let me just ask, would anybody out there want to share any of the responses that people came up with? If not, I'll just, I can tell you what some of the most, yes?
An adrenaline rush.
Oh, good, adrenaline rush.
Loss of sleep.
Well, we'll talk about that one, loss of sleep.
Feeling limited with your ideas and come up with your solutions.
I've missed that feeling.
Limited in your solutions.
Okay. And what's interesting is you can feel stuck, limited, but also aren't there times when you feel like your mind's racing and you can't shut it down? In fact, let's play on that. Let's go back to the sleep because, as we'll see, stress smoke signals, what makes them interesting is they can go both ways. So, for example, aren't there some days when, you just don't want to get out from under those covers for nothing, right? Yeah, but aren't there some people that know all the best buys on eBay and QVC Home Shopping Channel at 3 in the morning? So definitely, yes. What else besides sleeping that we do every day which can go both ways? Eating? Oh, yeah. How about, are there any folks that sometimes when we're under stress eat a little bit more to numb that sort of edgy feeling?
Me.
Yes, of course. Now, let me ask, though, are there any folks out there that actually lose their appetite and eat less when they're under stress? There's a few, and of course we hate those people, don't we? Really, I understand that. Okay, but let me ask: is there such a thing as good stress? Of course. Do you do your best work when you're totally relaxed, totally laid back, or do you need a little bit of that, performance edge? A little bit of the juices are flowing, the butterflies are going. In fact, we know there are at least two pillars for peak performance. First, there's a sense of confidence and competence that even if I get knocked on my derriere, I'm going to figure out a way to get back into the game. I'm going to really fight through this. I'm not going to have to run away from the situation. I'm going to, somehow work it out. Plus, there's this optimal level of physiological arousal. Those butterflies, that creative juice is going. It's when the stress is ongoing and there doesn't seem to be any relief in sight, when there feels like there are too many demands, too much responsibility, not enough control, authority, or autonomy, that's when normal or good stress turns to chronic or distress. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think most of us can relate to that. Oh, one of my more favorite. Anybody muscle tension, tightness in the neck and shoulders? Call it the boomer back. Anybody with tension in the jaw? TMJ? Yeah. Well, you know what TMJ really stands for, don't you? Too many jerks. So we know that one. Yeah, we understand that. Okay. Now let me ask. Now I didn't go into my background, but the reason I became a stress expert is that I burnt out while working on a doctoral dissertation. Burnt out, dropped out, but I saw the silver lining. I became an expert on stress and burnout. Now, let me ask, am I the only one that's ever flirted with burnout? Can I have an amen and a women chorus, please? No. Yes, thank you. Let me give you a quick definition of burnout, and then I'll go into the stages. Burnout's a gradual process by which a person detaches from work and other significant roles in relationships in response to excessive and prolonged stress and mental, physical, and emotional strain. The result is lowered productivity, cynicism, confusion, a feeling of being drained, having nothing more to give. Doesn't sound like fun. And ironically, what often can bring this on, as it did with my doctoral pursuit, I was trying to do something very creative that was frankly totally off the academic wall. It's when we get this fixated on this one, there's only one right position, one right person, one right path, and I'm not going to give up no matter what, and you just sort of squeeze yourself dry. Instead of having, the courage and the maturity to say, you know what, let me step back so I can get at least another perspective. It's when we've invested so much time, money, ego into, as I say, person, place, or thing, and that we can't let go, that's when we're really inviting trouble. So let me go through the 4 stages of burnout. The first stage I call failure, helplessness, and crisis. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the first stage. That's the 4th stage. It's physical, mental, emotional exhaustion. This is where you're probably still holding it together at work, but anybody recognize this sequence? As soon as you get home, right for the fridge, get out the Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's and the light beer, put on the tube, hit the sofa, and you're comatose for the rest of the evening. Am I the only one that goes through that sequence? I suspect some of us can relate. And you know what's going on that I think contributes to it is we're all in this 24/7, always on, do more with less world. And, it's especially frustrating when people are going through reorganization or downsizing or just don't have the resources that we really need to do the job the way it's supposed to be done, because half the time you feel like you have one hand tied behind your back. And then it gets frustrating. Do I cut corners? And if I do I become resentful? Do I feel guilty? Anyway, you wind up having a case of the brain strain, starting to feel exhausted. Maybe you're ready for the second phase, which I call shame and doubt. Here's someone asks you to take on a new project, and there's part of you that wants to, but this little voice inside that says, who are you kidding? Now what's starting to happen? Well, you can start having doubts about how you're handling things in the present. You can start really getting concerned about what's going to happen in the future. You can even start discounting what you've accomplished in the past. And then you wonder, gee, will friends, colleagues, family members sense there's something wrong? Oh, what about this smoke signal? Anybody can relate to this one? Okay, I think we're ready. On 3, let's have a good group sigh. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Come on, once more with feeling. 1, 2, 3. There it is, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir of sighing, right there in Massachusetts. I'm impressed. Okay, now, seriously, when do you hear people engage in sort of heavy and labored sighing and breathing, other than when you call those 1-900 numbers? No, stop. But to get serious for a moment, I'm sure someone out there probably in the last couple of years has been to a funeral. And if you get close enough to the people that are dealing with that kind of poignant loss, you can almost touch that sort of sighing and breathing. And while that's a dramatic smoke signal, what are really all these smoke signals saying? I think it's your mind-body saying, hey, you've been pushing too hard for too long without taking a pit stop. I mean, think if you were a NASCAR, just racing around the track and didn't take a pit stop. What's going to happen? You know, after a while, well, first you'll run out of fuel, but probably even before that, you're going to burn up, an engine or blow out a tire. And while that's a mechanical analogy, I think it has some relevance for human beings. Really, your mind-body is really trying to get your attention. It's trying to say, hey, if I can't get your attention by breaking down in a small way, guess what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to break down big time to get you to slow down. So this is important stuff. Am I the only one that doesn't like to be in a profound state of uncertainty and vulnerability for long periods of time? Is that anybody's favorite place? No! Which is why a lot of people move to the third phase, which I call cynicism and callousness. This is where you start feeling, I've had enough of this uncertainty and vulnerability. I'm putting on my heavy armor, cover your derriere, look out for number one, get out of my way, and that's that. And in the short run, it works. You become abrasive enough that people start avoiding you. But in the long run, it may not be the best coping strategy. As I like to say, strong silent types put on their heavy armor. Nobody's getting to me. But guess what? Nothing's getting out. All that tension and frustration is just churning and bubbling inside. And that's why I say strong silent types get a lot more ulcers than they do Oscars. And ironically, who can be susceptible? Nice guys and nice gals can be susceptible to some of this cynicism and callousness. Why? What can't nice guys and nice gals do? They have a hard time saying no. They have a hard time setting boundaries, setting limits. In fact, I've heard more people tell me over the years that when I've done these seminars that until I learned how to say no, I was living on the edge of stress. Can anybody relate to that out there? Yeah, I suspect so. Let me give you some tips on saying no. Just let me throw them out there. The first thing is you want to acknowledge the importance to the person asking you a favor or asking a request. You want to acknowledge the importance to that person of their request. Then there are two possible tracks that I want to share. In one track, you might say, after they've made the request, you know what, I can't do ABC right now because of what's going on in my schedule, but I think I can help you with D, E, and F. In other words, you don't want to give a one-sided no. You want to let the person, hopefully understand that even though you're setting some limits, you still want to be a partner and a team player. Now, of course, we may not always have the luxury of being able to say, I can't do ABC right now, I can only do DEF. In that instance, let's say you're dealing with a, high up authority figure or whatever, and they're trying to convince you that their request is urgent and must get done now. First principle to remember is only urgent, truly urgent things can have to be done now. Everything else can be prioritized. And the other key concept is don't allow someone's perceived sense of urgency to become your compelling anxiety. Because as I say, it's pretty rare when things are truly urgent. With that in mind, there's still a response when someone is saying that you have to, respect their sense of urgency. And that is to be able to say, you know what, before we just jump right in, let's take 5 minutes so I can reprioritize the things that I have on my plate so that I can give this urgent project the energy and the attention it deserves. That's so important, because what happens if you just keep piling more and more stuff on your plate? Clearly, either the plate's going to get so heavy you're going to drop it, or you're going to need to be pumping Rolaids and Tums in order to be able to manage things. And then, if you still keep taking things on and still are popping Rolaids, you know what? I'll see you in the emergency room. So it's really critical to be able to take these two approaches, either able to say, I can't do ABC, but I can do DEF, or this is urgent, great, let's reprioritize so I can give you the focus it deserves. Now, let me just ask another question. How do people respond when you tell them no? Do people like to hear a no? Of course not. And you know what? Half the time they haven't heard you because they're already thinking of a counter strategy. But what do nice people tend to do? We tend to think, oh gee, maybe I didn't say it clearly enough. Let me try another way of explaining myself. But you know how that other person probably hears it? Oh, they're already changing their story. I guess they really didn't believe what they were told me in the first place. So the key is to basically paraphrase what you said. And that is, as I said before, ABC, I can't do ABC, DEF, or let's take some time out to reprioritize. The other key concept is let people push back a little bit. They're frustrated when they hear a no. Let them argue why they think their position is right and they think you're wrong. Now, don't let them be abusive. That's not acceptable. But even if they have some frustration or a little anger, let them push back. Because what research shows is when we allow people to what's called counter-argue, argue against us, and we show them that we're listening, we're not getting defensive, we may not agree, but we're at least acknowledging their perspective. When people get that kind of respect and they feel some sense of control in the relationship, they're more likely to come around and change their point of view. And why is that? Because do we always argue facts and figures, or do we really argue most of the time the status of the relationship? I'm going to say it's most of the time it's the status of the relationship. I want the freedom to disagree. I want the freedom to have some control in this interaction. And once we sort of, demonstrate that, half the battle is won. So I hope that makes sense. Of course, what happens was the stress smolders and turns to frustration and anger. And why are you trying to do this to me? Mistrust. This isn't just a formula for a hardening of the psyche or hard attitude. It also can be a formula for a hardening of the arteries. So, blood pressure problems, cardiovascular complications, people getting brain attacks or heart attacks or brain attacks or strokes at much too early an age. And finally, sometimes I'd rather see people get to the fourth phase, which, feels pretty crummy, failure, helplessness, and crisis. This is where you start feeling, damned if I do, damned if I don't, damned if I stay, damned if I leave. I feel like my coping structure is coming unglued. Next stop, the stress doc's couch. Well, it's a nice couch. But clearly, this can even cycle to a point where we're really starting to feel kind of depressed. Okay, now that I've probably depressed most of the people out there, let me give you some quick strategies. I call it developing natural speed. Oh, we're looking for the PowerPoint. And, I'm sorry. Here are the 4 stages of burnout. And let me give you natural speed. So the first is sleep. And as I like to say, don't be cheap with your need for sleep. It's nature's way to ebb and flow and help you grow. Let me ask, how many people out there are getting at least 6 hours of sleep? What percentage of the audience is getting that? About half?
Yeah, 40-50%.
Okay. Now, why do I say 6 hours? Because that's basically 2 REM cycles, our sort of most complete, most nourishing cycles of sleep. Now, why is that critical? Well, for example, why have many medical institutions finally realized that they have to give their residents and interns at least the opportunity to get 6 hours sleep? Why? Because of medical malpractice suits. In other words, your mind after a while really starts losing its sharpness if you're sleep deprived. In fact, one study I think said the equivalent of almost like just 36 hours, basically of not really nourishing sleep has your blood alcohol level to a point where you could probably wind up in jail, if you were driving a car. So it really takes a toll. P, well, we've talked about priorities, saying no. I have my two favorite sort of little stress doc isms. Do know your limits and don't limit your no's. And a firm no a day keeps the ulcers away and the hostilities too. So we know that priority setting is important. E stands for empathy. E is for the empathy, found in a caring shoulder, but all give without take is a big mistake, for now you shoulder a boulder. The real key here, I think, is to have a stress buddy. Does everybody have a stress buddy at work? Someone that you can really sort of open up to. I think that's just essential. So that might be something to think about. The other E stands for exercise. Let me ask again. How many people would say they're getting at least 30 minutes of, vigorous walking, swimming, cycling, 3 to 5 times a week? Again, what's the percentage? Less than 10. Well, you know what all this really shows is this group likes to sleep more than they like to exercise. No, I'm only kidding. But, okay, for the 10% that raise their hands, why do you exercise? Please call out. It reduces stress. Why else do we exercise? Right. Okay. Cardiovascular, endurance. Yeah. What was that? I missed that one. I heard something about the gym. Oh, very important. Because, they say good exercise also doesn't just improve performance in the boardroom. So, okay. Now, I think there's another valuable, almost as important as some of the ideas mentioned, and that is, think about it. Am I the only one that sometimes has days where I feel nothing really tangible is getting accomplished? I probably am accomplishing something, but it just feels like I'm mostly spinning my wheels. Am I the only one that ever goes through that? I suspect not. What I like about exercise, what I like about when I either get to the gym or walk around, we have a kind of a soccer field. When I do my 30 minutes on a treadmill or 30 minutes of walking, and I manage to find a place where I can do a little stretching and maybe just a little yoga for 10, 15 minutes, maybe weights for 5 minutes, what I've done is I've created a beginning and end point for a tangible sense of accomplishment and control. I'm creating what I call an opportunity for a success ritual. And especially when things feel stressful and up in the air, I want to feel grounded. Doing that kind of exercise routine really helps me feel grounded, helps me get that sense of that, as I say, that beginning and end point for a tangible sense of accomplishment and control. That success ritual. I don't love to exercise. I do like feeling virtuous. So keep in mind that exercise is really valuable. And so we have sleep, priorities, empathy, exercise, and the final one is diet. Again, very basic. What we put into our system really makes a difference in terms of not just overall health, but that mental alertness, that ability to really hit our peak cognitively. So these are all, and again, we may need a buddy to help us. Changing food habits, ways of eating, is one of the hardest things to change because there are so many emotional memories. So many key people are associated in our mind with food, with dining. It's just, there's a whole history. So some of these things really are very challenging to change on your own. So don't be afraid to reach out, for some, whether it's from a friend or whether a nutritionist, get some support if you need it to begin to, really make some of these kinds of changes. Okay, now, in addition to natural speed, sometimes to really get revved up, you need a little healthy aggression. Let's see if we can create this. Can everybody find an eyeball partner? Somebody you can eyeball? Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay, because this will be fun. If we can do this, this will be a lot of fun. So let's see if we can find an eyeball partner. Oh, okay. Now I need you to select, and if you got 3 people, you can do 2 on 1. So even if there are odd number of folks in the room, it should work.
We're all paired up, Mark.
Okay. Now I need you to decide who's going to be person A and who's going to be person B. Has nothing to do with type A or type B. So just select a letter.
All right, we're all set.
Okay. Now I need you to think of one person in your life who can be a pain in your butt. And hopefully you're not looking at that person. Now I know most people say to me, Mark, how can I limit it to just one? I know it's difficult. Okay, so you've got your letter. You've got the person in your mind who can be a pain. Now I just need you to think, what are the general issues that I butt heads with this person? You know, who's going to be in control? Who thinks they're smarter? Who has the moral authority? Who should make decisions? Who should control the money? I remember my friend Paul and Betsy, and Paul saying to his wife, I don't mind paying the bills. I just don't like it when you tell me to pay the bills. I'm sure none of us have those kinds of issues. So since this is all hypothetical, we never get into power struggles with anyone. Okay, so here's the scoop. So you've got your letter. You've got the person that's a pain. You've got the issue. When I tell you, person A is going to say, you can't make me. And person B is going to say, oh, yes, I can. And the only instructions are you can't get out of your chair. But you can be a little aggressive. You can be passive-aggressive. Now, you don't want to crush your opponent. But you want to, you don't want anybody pushing you around. So let's try it. When I tell you, you'll say, you can't make me. Oh, yes, I can. You can't make me. Oh, yes, I can. And then when I start screaming and clap my hands, then say what you'd really like to say to that person. Okay, lock and load those eyeballs. Ready, set, go. Okay, say what you'd really like to say. Okay, sounds good here. Okay. Okay, that was very good. That was very good. Now, on the one hand, there are two sort of functions of this exercise. Obviously, could you feel the energy in the room change? It was subtle, but I think we could sense it. What happened? Why was there suddenly this burst of energy? Why was there this burst of energy in the room? I think, just again, because of time, I think because we created an atmosphere where it was safe to get a little aggressive, to be a little feisty. It was like a little role play. But what I wanted everybody to see is that when we feel comfortable releasing some of our aggression, but yet not taking everything so personal, because there was a lot of laughter. We saw the absurdity in the situation. But that combination of a little aggression, being able to not take it so personal, see the absurdity, that frees up this wonderful energy. And so I want you to think about, how can I bring that energy more into my day-to-day life? Because that's such a, that healthy aggression. If anybody plays sports, you need to channel some of that aggressive energy, or dance, or writing poetry, or painting, or almost anything that you really want to do well. There's a component where you really got to focus and bring that energy. On the other hand, there's also a good communication skills component of this exercise. Did anybody have a good response to, you can't make me, oh yes I can? Oh, let me ask, who played person A? Raise your hand. Who are the A's? You like playing that role. That was fun. You could be a real pain. Now, what about for person B? Because you know what? It really is hard to make an adult. Unless you have immediate firing authority over someone, it really is hard to make people do things they don't want to do. So it can be frustrating for the person B's role. Did any person playing B role have a good response that they want to share? That's PG. No. Okay. Let me just give you. I've obviously thought this out, but let me share. Let me see if it's. No, it's okay. Some strategies. One of the things I usually do when it's a live exercise, when I'm in a live workshop, I'll ask somebody to take an invisible rope and ask them pull the rope hard. And it's just as they're really starting to pull hard, what do you think I do? I drop the rope and then start running because they're probably coming after me. But no, why do I drop the rope? Because when somebody pulls on our rope or pulls on our chain, the response is either to walk away, I don't want to have to do anything with that, or I've got to show I can pull just as hard as the other person. And you get into that sort of tug of war. There's a third option. We can drop the rope. When I drop the rope and I walk closer to the person that I've given the rope to initially, I always say, you know what? Dropping the rope doesn't mean I'm afraid of this other person. It's really saying, hey, this isn't working for me, the way we're talking about this issue. Can we come up with another way of problem solving, another way of talking about it? So it's really a way of trying to, not be so focused on the power struggle, but try to diffuse it and have a dialogue. So with that sort of in mind, and maybe with one other concept that I like, or let's look at the slides. Can I connect to a person's pain and passion, purpose and power? I believe if someone feels like you're trying to understand them on that level, they're going to, feel like there's maybe a basis for some communication. Also, can I reduce the status differential? Can I try to be more adult to adult and not play my authority trump card? And can I avoid all or none thinking? There's a quick way of showing the power of getting away from all or none thinking, especially through I versus you messages. You messages, oh, you shouldn't think that way. How can you do that? You're always late. Those kind of blaming you messages definitely create defensiveness. No, you can't make me. Oh, yes, I can make you. They really feed into a power struggle. It's when we learn how to say, you know what, I've got some concerns here. Not, you don't know what you're talking about. Very simply, can you hear the difference between you're wrong versus I disagree? I see it differently. Just you're wrong versus I disagree. Two words, yet the first, you're wrong, is dismissive. Not just of the argument, but of the person as well. I disagree by definition means I'm taking into consideration your position. Remember, we don't have to agree with someone, but we always want to at least try to acknowledge the message sent. So, with all that in mind, and one other concept, I like to try to, when I'm at my best in dealing with conflict, I try to be both vital and not afraid to be vulnerable. With that in mind, let me throw out my intervention with you can't make me, oh yes I can. Person B might be able to say, you know what, I don't know if I can make you or I can't make you. That's not where I'm coming from. Now let me just step outside the box for a second. When I say it that way, have I given up my power? I don't think so. I think I've just put it on the shelf. I don't know if I can make you or I can't make you. That's not where I'm coming from. Now I'll continue in role. If there's a problem with the project or a problem with me, can we talk about it? Again, I'm going to step outside. Why is it so important to have the courage, and I literally use that word very consciously, to have the courage to ask, if there's a problem with me, or a problem with the project, a problem with me, can we talk about it? What message are we giving off when we raise that kind of question? Anybody? When you say, hey, if there's a problem with the project or a problem with me, can we talk about it? What message are we really giving off? I think we're saying, I don't have all the answers. I value your input. I think there's another thing that we're also doing when we have the courage to ask that question. And that is, we're really being open to somebody's frustration and anger. Has anyone really been in a relationship where either it felt safe to express your anger, and how did that feel? And a relationship where it didn't feel safe to express your anger, and how did that feel? I think relationships not abuse, remember, absolute abuse is not acceptable, but a little attitude, a little anger. When we say to someone, hey, if something's bugging you about the project, about me, and can we assume that somebody's upset? If you're really into a power struggle with someone, can we likely say someone's upset about something? I think so. So when you're able to say to that person, hey, if something's bugging you about the project, about me, you're saying, I'm willing to hear even bad news. I'm going to risk, hearing something that might feel uncomfortable. But I think you're really saying, I'm willing to hear your anger. And I am convinced there's nothing more that helps build trust in a relationship when you take the risk of saying to someone, inviting someone to share some of their anger. So this whole sequence, I don't know if I can make you or I can't make you. That's not where I'm coming from. If something's bugging you about the project or about me, can we talk about it? Hey, I know I need your help. I think I'm in a position to help you as well. I don't want us pulling apart. I want us pulling together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to go into one other P word in addition to power struggles that I think many of us can relate to. Let me ask, am I the only one that when I have an important document to write or a project to work on, I suddenly have this urge to vacuum the living room? Oh, good. I see I'm not the only one. So let's talk about one of my favorite topics, emancipation procrastination. Or is it time to panic? Let me throw out, let's see if we can have just a little back and forth here. Why do we tend to procrastinate? Why do we procrastinate?
We're lazy or we don't want to do it.
Lazy, we don't want to do it. Good start. What else?
Are you so confident?
Yeah, sure. Do I have the skills?
Scared?
Scared? What are really people's expectations? And sometimes even prior success. Yeah, I did it well last time. Now what are they going to expect of me? And so it's not just fear of failure, it can be also fear of success. So there are a number of reasons. Of course, can there ever be times when it's productive to procrastinate? Hey, maybe I don't want to jump to a conclusion. Maybe I want to get a little more information. Maybe I want to see how things are playing out. Sometimes there's real wisdom in delaying. But unfortunately, many times we procrastinate, I think, because, as someone said, we're anxious or scared. Let me give you some of my ideas on overcoming procrastination. First, we've talked about the importance of letting, either on our own or with the help of someone else, setting priorities so we don't feel we have to do it all. Next is perfection. I suspect there's some perfectionists out there. I know I had a struggle with that one. The problem is, especially if your perfection leads to frustration, then you can start saying, you know what? Nobody knows how to do this the right way. Nobody does it, really does the job the way it should be done. Eventually, people are going to agree with you. You're right. Nobody can do it like you. You do it. So that's not the best approach. Also, I see people sometimes afraid to get started because, if you don't do it perfect, then you're a loser. And in this day and age, I don't want to be a loser. That's not cool. So what's real important is to develop what I call selective perfection. There are some things I want to do A+, but I've learned that many things I can do B work, even sometimes a C effort. I've got to have a little more control in terms of discriminating, where it's okay to be good enough and where I really want to be at my best. And of course, this takes, some inner courage and confidence. Let's go to the A, avoidance. Because I think it often is at the heart of procrastination, especially when it's anxious avoidance. We don't want to be exposed as not being able to handle the situation as effectively as we would like to believe we can. How do you deal with that kind of anxiety? Well, one suggestion I have is just allow yourself to have the courage to feel the anxiety for 30 seconds. You see, why procrastination is so successful, in quotes, is that it shuts down your anxious feelings. You just turn it off. You go to sleep. You watch TV. Do you know what I'm saying? It just shuts down some of that anxiety. One way of breaking into that vicious pattern is just having the courage to feel that anxiety for 30 seconds. You may not be ready to start working on the project, but if you do that, the project will not feel quite as intimidating. And then you may come back to it at a later point. You may decide, hey, you know what? I sat through 30 seconds of anxiety. I can get started. So it's really breaking into the barrier, the impassable barrier. Let me ask another question, because I think this can help. Learning how to work more in advance. Do any people feel they do good work at the 11th hour? Do I see some hands up there? I'm sure a lot of people do good work at the 11th hour. I just don't think you can do your best work at the 11th hour. To do your best work, when I say best work, I mean to be a little imaginative, to bring a fresh perspective, to really bring some new thinking to the problem at hand. You have to learn to hit a wall, to get stuck, and then let go. Go to sleep, take a walk, write about, because if you keep trying to willpower your way through a problem, you're not going to tap into the more creative aspects of your mind. Your mind needs to hit this wall. Someone called it frustration, when you're torn between thrusting ahead with frustration, thrusting ahead with direct action and frustration because you haven't quite put together the pieces of the puzzle. This tension fires up more the right hemisphere of your mind, where holistic imagery, thinking more in a gestalt kind of way as opposed to just logical, analytical thinking, almost dreamlike imagery gets stirred up. So you're tapping into a rich other source of potential information. So when I'm doing my best writing, I want to hit the wall not just one night, 2 nights. I want to have several nights to sleep on the problem. Anybody ever go to bed with a problem on your mind, you just can't think of the answer, you know it's there, and then you wake up and you've discovered the answer? How did that happen? Did your fairy godmother whisper the magic word? No, your subconscious mind was percolating on the issue. So learning to work in advance, give yourself several days to hit a wall and to experience that frustration, which can create what I call a psychic volcano, where all this underground information starts percolating up. That's how you come up with more creative perspective. Does that make any sense? Okay. We've talked about the ability to say no and to negotiate. Oh, this is designated nagger. If you know you're having a hard time starting a project or working something through, don't keep it secret, because that only just compounds the tension, and then you start really becoming ashamed of talking about your inertia. Go public. Have someone, like a stress buddy kind of, designate a nag or someone you give permission to bug you. Initiation. Much like I said, take on a little bit of anxiety. Learn to start small. Sometimes all I can do is jot down a few ideas, and then I got to walk away. I'm not ready to get started on, a writing assignment. It's so important. Let me ask it this way. Did anybody have a parent whose idea of giving a helpful kickstart was literally to kick you in the butt? If you did, you were fortunate. When I used to have more problems with procrastination, I had a mother that would recite the ancient Roman poet Horace to me. To begin is to be half done. Dare to know. Start. And you wonder why I'm such an expert on stress, guilt, and neurosis. And you know what was the worst thing? She was right. The key is to get started. Sometimes just starting small, just writing down a few ideas, or even just taking out some implements that you may need to work with. Because starting small breaks into that amorphous mass. It's no longer such an overwhelming problem. I've referred to this, take an incubation vacation. After you've hit the wall, let go, let that subconscious mind, do some work. So walk away, take some time out. Finally, C. We're such great multitaskers, we forget sometimes you need to just compartmentalize. You need to say, you know what? For the next 2 hours, I've got to focus on this. I've got to limit the phone calls. I can't talk to people for more than 2 minutes. Whatever it is. Relearning how to compartmentalize can be critical. And finally, I know I value so much when I can go to like a tea house or a coffee house, and just find what feels like my creative space, a place where normal distractions aren't there, a place that just seems to stimulate my psyche. So does that make sense? Learning how to panic. Well, you know what? We're just about at wrap-up mode. Before I do, any questions out there? I know I've thrown a lot at you, and I really appreciate your being as attentive as you have been. Any questions? N and N? Know and negotiate. What I usually say is how we all value R and R, right? Rest and recreation. I think N and N is just as important. The ability to say no and to negotiate. That's why we went over some of those tips on saying no. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to close with a few items. First, everybody know the Serenity Prayer? Right? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know where to hide the bodies. No, and the wisdom to know the difference. And the older I get, the more profound that seems. And yet, I'm always left with one nagging question. How the heck do you get the wisdom? Okay, folks, here it is. The secret of wisdom. Once there was a young woman who heard that an old wise woman had the secret of wisdom. And the young woman was determined to track the old woman down. And sure enough, after traveling many months, the young woman found the old woman in a cave. And she went in and said, "Old wise woman, I hear you have the secret of wisdom. Would you share it with me?" The old woman looked at the youth and said, "Yes, you seem sincere. The secret of wisdom is good judgment." "Good judgment, of course," said the youth, and thanked him, entered and started to leave. But once again she stopped in her tracks, walked back, said, "Old woman, I feel funny, but I have to ask, how does one obtain good judgment?" That's a good question, said the old woman. One obtains good judgment through experience. Experience, of course, said the youth, and again thanked the mentor and started to leave, but once again she stopped in her tracks, went back, shrugged her shoulders, said, Old woman, I feel foolish, but I have to ask, how does one obtain experience? Now you have reached the right question, said the old woman. How does one obtain experience? Through bad judgment. So, I want you all to make plenty of mistakes, and just to show you that none of you can top me when it comes to bad judgment, I am going to reveal, you know that opening picture? Let me see if we can go back to it. Jack's going to help me here. There we go. You see that picture of me with the sunglasses and hat? Now just imagine me banging under the table a black tambourine. You see, I'm pioneering the field of psychologically humorous rap music. You're right to be concerned. And as a therapist, calling it, of course, shrink wrap productions. Grown now. We'll see how's the last grown. Actually, I call this my Charlie Chaplin maneuver. Everybody remember the film Genius? Chaplin said a paradoxical thing about making comedy is that it's precisely the tragic which arouses the funny. We have to laugh due to our helplessness in the face of natural forces and in order not to go crazy. Now, what you're about to see here will definitely give new meaning to the word tragic. And as for not going crazy, it's way too late for me for that. So as I like to say, buckle up your straitjacket. Here we go. The Stress Docs Stress Rap. Ready? When it comes to feelings, do you stuff them inside? Is Tough John Wayne your emotional guide? And it's not just men, so proud and tight-lipped. For every Rambo, there seems to be a Rambette. So you give up sleep, become wired and spent, escape lonely frustration as a malcontent. It's time to look at your style of stress. You can't just dress or undress for success. Are you grouchy with colleagues or quietly mean? Hell, you'd rather talk to your computer machine when the telephone rings. You're under the gun. Now you could reach out and really crush someone. The boss makes demands, yet gives little control. So you prey on chocolate and wish life were dull, but office desks a mess. Often skipping meals. Inside your car looks like a pocketbook on wheels. Those deadlines, all that aggravation. You only have time for procrastination. Now I made you feel guilty. You want to confess. Better you should practice the art of safe stress. Thank you. That's okay. I've been doing this long enough. I know when an audience is applauding out of relief. No, all that shows after 20 years off and on of all kinds of therapy, from Jungian analysis to primal scream, I have one singular accomplishment. Just one. Absolutely no appropriate sense of shame. So on that note, I want you all to be more shameless, more outrageous, do more rapping, but mostly turn to what I know is a wonderful intelligence, energy, and empathy.